Hey everyone, and welcome to my championship recap, week 4. Some exciting games this week, and another exciting guest that I have the privilege of bringing onto the show. Why don't you say hi, Nockess?
Hey, I'm here and I'm Nockess.
How are you doing?
Uh, yeah, I'm here. No, no, um, coming off a loss off of my match this past week, but we'll talk about that later. But still, pretty high spirits and excited to be here. And I always like talking about Marble Blast. So I think joining, coming aboard this is a good fit for me.
Awesome. Well, if there's one thing or maybe a few things that people should know about you, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, what would you say that is?
Goodness me. I have a very detailed history with Marvel Blast. At the same time as being one of the better players in both single player and multiplayer, I also am the catalyst of the largest scandal in Marvel Blast. But I also make a bunch of levels, and I like organizing events and whatnot. And in my free time personally, I am very into music and into soccer or football, depending on which side of the Atlantic you come from. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. All right. Well, the way we do this show is we're going to go through the results from the previous week of games, some very exciting ones to talk about there. Then we're going to check in with the updated ELO for everyone. I know you have some thoughts on that. And then we're going
I
to look
definitely
at,
do.
yeah, next week's predictions as well. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to start from the bottom of the table results. So if there's anything that you really want to talk about, we can. But for the most part, I think these were kind of some expected results across the board here. Farmer's Wife having a nice feel good match against Death Laura in the all female battle in the tournament. So that was exciting to get to see. Ziggleflig taking a very friendly 3-0 over Porter on some of the most expert maps in the game, where neither of them were able to really get that many spawns, but that was fun. Inetro forfeiting against Herzelis. And then at the bottom is a game we casted, which is Endzone versus Jacob, and we had no intention of casting that, but it kind of just happened. What were your thoughts on that game that we saw?
Yeah, it was really fun to watch. It was also my first time getting to know really either player in the hunt scene. Jacob was better than I thought he would be, given what I had heard about him in general at all in the Marble Blast context. Endzone still pretty comfortably won all three games, and um, if I had known more about the two of them, that's a 3-0 was probably what I would have expected. Um, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, it was a fun game to watch, and it was exciting to see the room that both players have to develop.
Of course, yeah. I actually predicted a 3-1 for that game because I thought Jacob had really put in some time to improving. You know, he's very young, so he doesn't really get a lot of time on the PC to actually practice and play. But I know he was putting in an effort on all the, hunt levels, multiplayer levels by himself and was able to get all the platinum scores. So I have faith in him to take one game, and I was oh so close to cashing in on my bonus score prediction for the bet. He was very close to getting game 2 and game 3, so a little sad about that one, but I guess everyone that predicted 3-0 is going to collect. Final game on this slide is the Pasta Reel versus Element Lover, and this was one that I would say no one really knew how to, expect coming into it. Very few people have actually played against either of these players, with Pasta Reel being, I think in Vietnam is where he's located, so very odd time zone for multiplayer, and had some difficulties with his connection for a while, and Element Lover being very new to the hunt scene. So this is kind of an uncertain one for everyone. What did you actually end up betting for this game?
What did I end up betting for, betting for this one? I bet in favor of Element Lover, a 3-2 prediction, which is exactly what happens.
Lucky dog.
Um, so yeah, I got pretty lucky on that one, and I also have my big giant fat betting spreadsheet pulled up here on my own screen. So yeah, let's see what we have here. Uh, I'm just kidding. I was looking at the wrong time. I had a 3-1 prediction in favor of Pasta Real, so I did not cash on that one. Cash in on that one.
Ah,
But someone who I know that, yeah, actually, I'm not sure anyone guessed that one correctly. No,
there
I'll
were
get
gonna
back
be
to you
some
on that
three
one.
twos, I think, for sure for Element. I know at least one person nailed it, which is really impressive. I actually had a 3-2 for Pasta Real, but I was very surprised at how Element played. Having known him for a while, he's very hot and cold. He will either have a game way above his skill level, or he will kind of get bored and not try that hard. But as you can see in this clip on the right, he kind of locked in for this fun in the sun play where he super jumps over and bounces off the ground to collect a blue, which is something that not even I can really do that consistently. So nice stuff from him. And the other thing about this series that was fun is that everyone lost their own pick. So going to game five off of a lot of losing, and it was triple trails the decider, and Element won by about one spawn. So very close and exciting match. Moving on to the next slide, this was the 1-1 versus 0-2, where Sergi was a little bit unfortunate to be in the bottom bracket, got matched up against Yoshi, and took a nice decisive 3-0. I thought it would be pretty clean, but I kind of figured Yoshi would pick like an Eye of the Storm or something and take a game, but that was not to be the case this time.
Yeah, I think Yoshi definitely has a bit of a reputation for picking uh, those niche maps. He took a game off.
Turk.
Was it Turk? I think. Yeah, the week before on I assume Eye of the Storm, if I'm not remembering correctly.
Yeah, it was, I think.
But yeah, pretty much everyone had the same feelings about this one. 12-1 odds in favor of Surge, and the one, of course, was A Game, who has currently bet on the expected, you can say the expected loser on
Wow.
every match, and
Yep.
but keyword is expected, and once in a while once in a while he cashes in. Um, but yeah, anyway, I think a 3-0 on Surge was about what everyone expected.
Yeah. On the right here, we have a clip from one of the top level matches of the week, MBO versus Mazik. Definitely one of the contenders for match of the week. There's some mega marble action here on Triple Trail, Mazik's pick for game two. And at this point in the game, Mazik was actually still down. MBO had a massive lead to start this one off, but with about half a minute left in the game, really was starting to rally. And you can see MBO flying in with the Mega Marble after Mazik does and knocks him away. So Mazik secures the last three reds, and that kind of evened up the score, and he was able to make it in the end. Going on to the 1-1 bracket, we have some pretty big sweeps for Zedron. I think everyone's been super impressed with Kago, but I think this one was just going to be a little bit out of reach for even one game, and that turned out to be the case. We had Eurobeater take a 3-0 over Plat, and Turk taking a 3-0 against Plasma in a funny revenge match after Plasma took a 5-game series over his wife. So that was enjoyable to watch. Plasma also had the nerve to pick Cubile against Turk, which is of a similar intelligence level of Babarika picking Parkour Peaks against Ignis. So we've had some very questionable map picks this far in the tournament. I know I'm not one to talk. We'll get to my series later, but yeah, it's been pretty funny. And then there's some substitution happening with Terry coming in for Quill after Quill unfortunately had to drop out of the tournament. So that was a game that I expected Terry to not come in so hot, but we watched this one as well. What were your thoughts on the match?
Yeah, I said it while we were commentating, but Terry is frankly a lot better than I thought he would be. And I'm echoing myself over and over here again when I say that. He plays a lot. He's very familiar with the single player game. He had an appearance in the last Platinum World Record Rampage, and he does a lot of RTA stuff. So there are some aspects of what I know him to be super familiar with that definitely translates over to Hunt very well. But his performance against Subtract was fantastic, and it was exciting to see. That was my introduction to him playing Hunt at all. I'd never seen him play before. And I think Subtract played fine. I wouldn't even say that he played poorly or anything. T-Harris was just that much better and looked much more comfortable throughout the entire match.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about Subtract is they kind of picked maps that kind of fit into what T. Hurst is good at in the first place. So that might be something to think about for next time. As for not knowing much about Terry's hunt abilities, I think you're going to be learning some more about them next week. So we'll have to check in with that later. And then the main match that people were excited about on this slide is definitely the Jax versus A game one. This is very much a battle of raw speed versus multiplayer intelligence. I was personally expecting Jax to kind of just stomp a little bit more in their picks, but it was actually A game that had a pretty masterful display over his opponent, and it all kind of came to a head in Marble Agility Course, which was of course A game's pick in game 4, so able to lock that one in pretty decisively. I don't know if you got to see that game, probably not, but it was
Well,
close.
I might have seen a touch of it, but I think Jax might be prone um, to I don't want to say just a difficult can be prone to managing mental state during a match poorly. You have some people who just the nerves are not there at all, and they can play comfortably the whole time. Um, and I feel that Jax can slip down that slope pretty easily, and that may have uh, contributed to some of these closer games. We lost by 6 points on Nadir in the first game. Lost by 10 on Blast Club. Only won by 2 on Triple Deckers. So 3 really, really, really close games. Marble Agility Course was a bit more decisive.
Yeah, it also kind of shows that Jax doesn't really prepare for their games. It's kind of just whatever they feel like, but that doesn't really work when you're trying to pick Blast Club against A game. So I feel like there's a lot of players in this tournament where if they spent 5 minutes before the game thinking about what their opponent is good at and what they're good at, they would have a much more better chance at winning the series just by picking stuff that lines up better with their strengths. All right. Well, on the right here, we have a nice little gyrocopter snipe in Game 5 from Frostfire. Ignis probably didn't see that one coming. Not too much to say about that. The rest of the 1-1 games now, we have Babarika and Kali. Unsurprisingly, Babarika was able to win this. We saw kind of flashes of brilliance from Kali at the end of the Tilo game, but it was just a little bit too little too late with the lead that Babarika had built up. Kali, I believe, also is playing on a laptop setup, which is far and away less performant than their desktop that they were using when they were able to take 3 games off MBO in last year's playoffs. So definitely not the Kali at peak form. We'll have to see how that progresses in the tournament. We had Wilches versus Osas, and I actually thought Sauce would take a game here. I was definitely part of the training for this and encouraging the hunting around pick as a upset map against better players, and that's exactly what happened. And Osas actually took a very decisive hunting around win before Wilches kind of ended it all in the remaining 3 games of the series to take that one. But I was able to collect at least a little on my bets. I'm pretty sure most other people didn't predict the 3-1, right?
Yeah, I assume so. I can check, but yeah, that's expected. I think just knowing how good Wilch is, I wouldn't say that Osas's hunting around win was a fluke by any means, because a 78-53 score is pretty decisive, but it's just telling that hunting around is a map that Osas has practiced and Wilch not nearly as much. But the other 3 games were a 60-point win on Triple Trail. King of the Marble was closer, but because it's King of the Marble, and another 60-point win on Marble City. So definitely a clear indication that Wilch is the better player by some distance. But hunting around definitely opened some eyes to, I'm sure, Osas as well, getting that kind of result against a very, very comfortable and decent player.
Yep, absolutely. Rest of the matches here, pretty cut and dry 3-0s. I think almost everyone would have predicted these to come through, and they did, unsurprising. On the right here, I have Element prepare my clips for these slide decks, and he was very excited about putting him using the teleporter to slow his momentum and come back to the spawn. So that is what's happening in this clip. I'm sure no one is impressed, but we will move on. um, Next up, we have the Battle of the Johns, John versus Power John 25. This was two games that Power John got to pick, which were one other map in Battle Cube. I know he
Uh,
picked into John,
Gems
which
in the
is
Road and Battle Cube.
yeah. Gems in the Road he looked pretty decent on. I was impressed. Battle Cube, not really a great pick into John. Another research kind of deal, but I've been a little bit confused about what Power John is actually good at in terms of map pool. I know he's a very fast player and kind of has that flaw where he doesn't really think strategically about where the next spawn is going to be and how to prepare himself for that. But he was very quick, and that kind of kept him in the game on that and Fun in the Sun for a while. But ultimately, John 3-0'd Zedrun last week, so not at all surprising that he was able to take a 3-0 over Power John here.
Yeah, I mean, Power John is one of the best single player players in the history of the game. He's currently at the top of the overall leaderboards in Platinum Quest, and beyond a obscene amount of dedication that takes, you have to be very, very, very good. So, yeah, Power John is expectedly wicked, wicked fast. But before this tournament, I'm not sure if he's ever spent more than a week having a in a gem hunt stint. So for someone who is such an incredible player at the game, it's really interesting to see that he still has a lot to learn because gem hunt is just a wildly different beast. Um, and I think people knew that there would be some skill that translated over also just from the solo hunt maps that are featured in Platinum Quest. But John sweeping here is frankly no surprise with all due respect to Power John.
Yeah, I would have to imagine that, if Power John was to get comfortable on maps where there's little like multiplayer interaction, like Base on Hill or Parkour Peaks, that would be a lot more successful for him. So we'll have to see if he can kind of index into that a little bit more. On the right, we have the Voltage versus Jacob match, where Jacob actually held his own considerably decently on Playground, but this blue was the bane of Jacob's existence. I think 3 times in the early match it went the way of Voltage. One time he actually respawned on top of it and stole it under Jacob's nose, so very unfortunate there. And I think if Voltage didn't sweep these blues in this match, we could have actually seen a game 5 with the way Jacob was playing. Um, of course, some of that is because Voltage was playing at extreme hours, I believe, so it was a little bit difficult for him, and he did drop a game on Eye of the Storm, but still, strong performance from Jacob. And now we're moving on to the 2-0 matches, which were definitely the highlight of the week for most people. The skill gaps were definitely the closest on these, so led to some pretty exciting matches, a couple 3-2s. First up, we have Frostfire versus Ignis, and this is one I thought Frost would be a little bit more decisive about, but upon looking at the map pools of the two of them, I'm not that surprised that it was taken all the way to Game 5. Ignis was able to pick Parkour Peaks and Sacred, both of which Frostfire is a little bit rusty on, to say the least, and that was enough to get him to Game 5, but overall I think Frostfire was the better player.
Yeah, Frostfire is, definitely up there in contention for the greatest hunt player of all time. I think my personal favorite memory is his final in 2015 against RC, against Roll Cage, which was one of the greatest finals, possibly the greatest final ever. But he has not been around that much recently, and it is stunning how he comes back to hunt, and it's almost like he never left. You can pick up exactly right where he left off. Not quite at the skill level that he was a few years ago, and I think Ignis is good enough that that his 2 wins were well deserved. Although a 1-point win on Sacreds, that's a really, really tight match. So yeah, anyway, I'm excited to see how Frostfire continues to play as he de-rusts maybe just for the tournament and then goes back into hibernation after he either gets eliminated or he wins. We'll have to see.
Yeah, for sure. And that 1-point Sacred one, it wasn't because Ignis was like quicker or anything. Ignis had the map knowledge to get it across the line with the respawn abuse. and that was enough to net him like several dominant spawns that really gave him the edge in that one. But good effort all around. Next, we have your match, where I cashed in on a 3-1 prediction for Eguy after you dedicated almost no practice to the match. How are you feeling about that one?
I mean, fine. Not not a whole lot to say about this one. My excuse slash personal anecdote is I am out of town for the next month and a half almost. So I am playing on a laptop setup. I even thought that bringing my gaming keyboard would help me out. I think it did a tiny bit, but frankly, I was not expecting to win this one. Um, I was not expecting to win any game, but Vibrancy Grounds pulled through and surprised myself a little bit on that one. But maybe that's one I should keep in mind for a closer match. But I think once I get back home and with my familiar setup, that's a more exciting game, and I think normally I'd have a much better feeling of being able to win. So, but hey, like a few years, 7 years ago, we could meet again in the playoffs, and if we do, I'll be sure to beat them that time.
Ah, love the confidence. I watched this one on my phone in my car while driving. I had someone reading the scores on your King of the Marble, and yeah, pretty fun. What actually inspired you to pick the first Vibrancy Grounds of the tournament?
Um, yeah, I'm not really sure. That's a great question. I think it's because it's a close map. It's hard to traverse, or not hard to. I mean, it's hard to traverse,
It is
but
very hard to traverse.
um, I'm typically more in favor of maps like Stadium or kind of the wide open maps because I'm fast. I'm a pretty fast player, but in general, I feel I've said this during the match. I feel about 70% or so while I'm out of town, and I think having to worry less about distance and maybe a little bit more about strategy could help me out. So yeah, Vibrancy Grounds clearly worked out well, and there's even more history with that game between me and Eguy. It's the same reason why I picked King of the Marvel alongside King of the Marvel just being kind of a meme map, and I don't think I've ever willingly chose to play it before. That isn't Labor Day Madness. Um, didn't work out for me, but I mean, you know, maybe King of the Marvel quite isn't quite my thing, but I'm okay with that. So anyone watching, that's a free win for you apparently.
I don't know about 9 points being a free win, but yeah. Cool. So next up we have me versus Connie, and I gotta say, I discovered what nerves are like in a tournament match. There was a little bit in my week 1 and week 2 games, but for this game, I could barely pull myself together, and also like my feet started falling asleep, and it was a complete mess. It was still enough to get it across the line, but I was not happy at all about the way that it happened, which I basically just won the same map 3 times because we played all 3 of the bowls, which was really, really funny. And Connie actually dumpstered me on my picks, which were meant to be more aggressive, like blast heavy stuff that I'm known for. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. I'm guessing you didn't get to actually watch this one.
I was able to step in for the last two games, but it sounds like or not, it sounds like apparently I missed a phenomenal or super super close game on Citadel, 107 to 108 win in favor of you. But the first game I got to watch was Acropolis 2, which I mean, 182 to 123. It's a 60-point win. Um, which I don't think I've ever seen you lose by that many lose by that many points. But after the first 20 or 30 seconds or so, Connie had such a lead that it was pretty telling for the rest of that game, um, uh, and that's what made it 2-2 going into the randomizer round. I didn't really know what to expect between the two of you, but I did. I think I did guess you to win. So thanks for letting me cash in on that.
Yeah, it was a really divided match in terms of the bets. I think it was about even, and then it was voted match of the week as well by one vote over MBO Mazik. So people clearly
Yeah, I think
enjoyed it.
rightfully so. Um, if I remember correctly, the five maps that were rolled through randomizer, Connie had a choice between playing either Bowl or
Sprawl.
Sprawl. Obviously, you won Bowl. You won all three Bowl style maps. But do you think, objectively, do you think Sprawl would have been a better choice for Connie?
I think Sprawl would have gone a bit better for me than Acropolis 2 did, but I lost by 60 points in Acropolis 2. I think Connie probably would have taken Sprawl with the way things were going. Now, I think in like a friendly game where the nerves aren't on, I think I would kind of have a better chance on a map like Sprawl, which is why I picked stuff like Acropolis and Triple Decker. But on the day, for sure, I think Connie would have been better at Sprawl. I mean, I know she's very confident that she is the best as it gets at those kind of open maps like this, but people kind of underestimate the amount of strategy that goes into a map like Bowl. And when the speed comes from pressing your power up button and not natural marble movement, that's kind of where the playing field is a bit level between the fast players like herself and me. All right. And then the last match is Voltage versus Jacob. This is wrong. It should be a 3-1 for Voltage. Good job, me. I did predict 3-0 though, so that was wrong. And yeah, good job for Jacob taking a game. And I believe these two have played each other before, so a nice little fun rematch. But I don't think anyone was too surprised about this outcome. For the clip, we have the Citadel game that I barely got across the line, and I sure am glad I did. I think this was just me using a random teleporter. Yeah, looks like it. And I think Connie said she should have taken more teleporters during the game, which I agree with. Just, it's hard to do that in the moment, know, like, what exactly is the fastest way to get there on Citadel, but I mean, if you're going to have it as one of your pocket picks, that's kind of something you got to master. All right, moving on to our match of the week. We have MBO versus Mazik. I didn't want to make my own game the match of the week, even though it was voted that. And personally, I think this one was a very exciting game. I had the pleasure of casting it with E-Guy. We had a great time. And it was very, very close. It looked like it could have been an MBO 3-0 really quickly. But Mazik was able to barely get back Triple Trail. Won by 7 points, one spawn at the end. And then from there, they won all of their own picks and got to the deciding par pit game. What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this was super, super, super fun. Really enjoyed watching this. I'm not sure if it's a graphical error, but I think Mazik won this one 3-2, not MBO.
Yep. You got me again.
Okay.
Originally, I was going to put Mazik on the left, but he was on the right from the last match of the week, and I thought I could be lazy, and that has come back to bite me. So
yeah, good effort. But yeah, I think I did actually get to tune into this one. I'm not sure I watched the whole thing, but I think after Triple Trails when I started really paying attention, and yeah, I think the scores are pretty telling about how this match went. Outlook definitely was the most one-sided. MBO Ultimate was, I'm not sure dominant with a capital D is exactly the right word to use, but
comfortable.
Significantly more comfortable. Mazik played an excellent game on Inferno Ring, and just edging out MBO on almost every, I mean, not almost every spawn, but felt like almost every spawn. And then Parpit was excellent. Talk about a nervy match, even from a spectator perspective.
Yeah, Mazik played significantly below the level that I usually expect of him. So kind of the same nerves that hit me in my match he felt here, but we were both able to come away with very narrow wins. When I saw the randomizer draft, I thought MBO was going to be extremely favored here as well, just because there was some classic MBU stuff. There was Skate Battle Royale in the picture that I knew Mazik was desperately trying to get up to MBO's level at. So that was the first ban. And there was just a lot of stuff that MBO would have been comfortable with, but they managed to get it to Par Pit. And that is a more technical map with the wall hits that Mazik was able to come up on top. MBO closes to 3 points at the end, but if you actually watch the game, there was very little chance that Mazik wasn't winning that by the end. It was more of a managing the gap kind of situation. And yeah, Mazik moves on. Very impressive match from both of these two. All right, so now we're going to check out the ELO website. I have this fun stat that I asked Sauce to put on, which is the week 3 map pick win rate. So 43% of people that picked their map won on that map. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure what to say about that. Probably it's God, yeah, I don't even know. Um, Depending on the player and also depending on the match, it could be anything from nerves to underestimation of their opponent um, I mean, yeah, really anything. I don't think there's one particular reason why the win rate was so low, but we'd have to check the other 2 weeks and kind of see how 43% fares out to the other weeks so far.
This is the lowest for sure. I think
Oh, absolutely.
there's two things that really factor into this, I would say, and the first one makes sense once you think about it. The lower seed gets to pick two maps, so in a 3-0, they picked 2 out of 3 maps, so 66%. So if the expected result in a sweep happens, then the map pick win rate for that series is 33%. So a
Yeah,
bunch of those
absolutely.
factored into the calculation. That's usually not enough to get it below 50%, because the close matches kind of level it out. But there were 2 series where everyone lost their own pick, which was the Element Lover versus Pasta Real series and me versus Connie. So that kind of dragged it across the line to make it a very amusing stat here. So we'll have to see if there's any other weeks like this, but I expect things to kind of go up from here, especially as the game gets closer and there's not as many sweeps to kind of have that 33% stat dragging it down. Looking at the actual rankings themselves, I would say this list this week is not as accurate as I would have liked, simply because the 1-1 bracket was so big that a lot of the games were so stompy that a lot of the midfield 1-1 players that won had their elo inflated significantly. Um, one example of that is Endy here, who's actually in 8th place off of taking a very easy, effortless 3-0 and basically stealing a ton of elo. And then someone like MBO or Connie, who was in the top bracket match and lost, had some elo and went down. So a lot of people like Endy, Lasharkus, Barbarica, they moved up above players that might be more deserving, like Ignis or someone else here in 15th. That might be
No comment.
a little salty looking at the leaderboard here.
Yeah, I'm not sure about -4 on that, but given that, I mean, yes, I had a 3-1 loss, but I also had a 3-1 loss to who was previously at the top of the leaderboards. So, but I'm not gonna question the math or the wizardry, whichever you'd like to believe. Um, I'm just gonna win against T-Hars. That's what I have to do.
Yeah, and Tiers is actually up here in 18th, so you could rocket right back up the standings very quickly, especially since half the people above you are going to lose, most likely. So that's something to keep an eye on. Some more big swings. Power John goes down 4 from being unlucky enough to play John. Zika and Farmer's Wife both stole a ton of elo from Porter and Deathlore, respectively, so they move up. Not much change in the midfield. And then Enetro, with the double forfeit, has kind of fallen all the way down here to 4th at the bottom. And then the bottom 3 are kind of in a league of their own in terms of elo, where whether they win or lose, they're kind of so far apart from each other that they can't really go anywhere. And Deathlore, in particular, down here at 421. If they can win a game, I think they're probably going to get like 300 elo or something. But yeah, we'll see how that goes and what the min and max end up being over the course of the tournament. All right, let's jump back into things with predictions for next week. And we're going to start with the 0-3 bracket games. There's only 4, actually, there's 5 people that are in the 0-3 bracket. One of them had to play level up. Enetro versus GG Jacob. Enetro is coming back this week, so this will not be a forfeit. But what are your expectations?
Yeah, I don't know Inatro's multiplayer skill level too much. He has been around for time. Has made plenty of Marvel Less videos. And he knows the game, but I don't know how much time he spent towards really improving either his single player um, or hunt talent, hunt skill, hunt knowledge. Um, I think I would like to see Jacob, with all due respect to Netro, of course, I would love to see Jacob win, given the direction that he seems to be going in. Young player, new player, showing signs of a sparkling, exciting life, and a very promising hunt career if he continues to go in the direction that he's going in. Um, so I think Jacob winning is probably what I would expect. But if Ian Etcher takes the game, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I actually went for a 3-1 for Inetro, and this is mostly based off of their pre-seed scores. Inetro, with a colored name, is pretty quick. You have to be fast to get platinum time on Tail of the Tall Skyscraper, as well as some other fun ones in MVP like Space Station and all those. I had a hell of a time finishing that off myself. And GG Jacob, I just don't think is at that level. So I know they've improved at multiplayer significantly since, but I still think Inestro is going to be favored. But I did see people going both ways on this in the bets, so it should be an interesting match to follow. Then we have Deathlore versus Porter. I think almost everyone has the same prediction for this match, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. I think Porter should take a fairly decisive 3-0.
Yeah, uh, yeah, with all due respect to Deathlora, I would be immensely, I don't think there is a word for how immensely proud I would be if she does manage to take any games throughout the entire tournament. But she really only plays Hunt when I do, because I bullied her into participating and also to make Jean happy. Um, so I think if Deathlora put in the time, um, outside of tournaments, that she would be able to boost the skill up a little bit. I think she even plays with the controller.
It
I
does
don't
look
think she
like
plays
that
with
if you've
keyboard.
seen the
I don't
matches.
think she, yeah, I don't think she plays with keyboard and mouse. I remember her grabbing over that in the voice chat at one point. So, but anyway, yeah, I think Porter winning is pretty much a guarantee, especially especially being a minion, as you've called them. Um, so yeah, that will not surprise me, frankly.
Porter also only plays for the tournament games and has really only logged on for the pre-seed. So this will be an exciting one. I will say these are the two players that I have seen that do not know how to respawn by pressing the power up button when they go out of bounds. So it is at least a level playing field there.
Maybe we can teach Deathlore how to use, Blast or Mega Marble. That's not too complicated. So
Yeah. Okay. Now we have Pasta Real being 0-3 after the defeat to Element Lover this week, playing up a level into Red Zone. This is another one that I think is pretty interesting. What are your thoughts on this?
I have a sweep from Red Zone in my predictions. Um, he's just been around for longer, which obviously is not the only contributing factor. But if I had to pick someone to win in the first place, it would be Red Zone. I'm still deciding on my bet for the score itself. I wrote 3-0 just to have something to start off with, but if Pasta Real won his game against, or not won his game against, but took 2 off of Element Lover. Um, a very decisive win on all angles, and he also won hunting around. So if he has either of those picks left, choose them against Red Zone, maybe he could take a game off.
Oh, I think he
But I
definitely
think
has
that
those picks since they were both Elements picks.
okay. Oh, were they? Oh dear. Yeah. Okay. Yes, they were. Anyway, well, with that said, I think if he learns from his past match, you could maybe use that in his favor against Red Zone.
Yep. I had a 3-1 for Red Zone, but I do think there is a large chance that Pasta's able to find a game to take, especially being the lower seed for this match in the standings. He's going to have 2 chances to take a game. So I think he can do it. Moving on to the 1 and 2 bracket, we have Subtract up against Yoshicraft. Very uncertain the result of this one, I think, because we didn't really know where Subtract was coming in. We also didn't know where Terry was before their game, so they're still kind of in no man's land, I feel like, in terms of people's expectations. Whereas Yoshi kind of got blown out by Surge last week. So who do you think is going to be able to win this time?
Yeah, Subtract versus Yoshicraft. I really have no idea. I think to me they're at a pretty similar skill level. Yoshi's generally just far more involved with the game, I think, than Subtract is. But both players are decent. So I mean, I'm I'm more confident uh, in my score prediction of a 3-2. Who actually wins that match? I think total toss up. It probably depends on the day for me.
Right. I've gone for a 3-1. I think Yoshi is definitely going to find a map that is really gimmicky for himself to take a win on, but you only get so many Eye of the Storm picks in the Swiss. And I don't think that one's coming out against Subtract, right? So I think he'll save that one for a later week. That's more important for the playoff picture. And Subtract, I thought they played a really good Stadium game against Terry, so I'm pretty sure they'll be able to find some more picks that they are comfortable on and should be slightly faster than Yoshi at. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I do have Subtract. I do have Subtract winning this match on my list of bets. Um, I think as I think about it, I think Subtract squeaks into the playoffs and Yoshi does not, barely. Um, but yeah, I would love to be wrong on either of those. So well, I'd love to be wrong on Yoshi. So, but yeah, we'll see.
I think there's actually room for both of them in the playoffs if I'm thinking it through because we're probably going to have about 28 or 29 make it this year.
Yeah,
Just because you only need to go 3-3 and not actually be in the top 24. So I could see both of those players taking a win in the 2 and 3 bracket. Moving on, we have Kago versus Turk's brother, Herzelis. Um, I have a Kago 3-0. I think Herzelis is actually quite good for the kind of newer bracket of players. They came very close to taking a Citadel win over Osas. But I think Kago is just improving too quickly. Is way too good at this game for how long they've been playing. So I have a fairly decisive 3-0 for Kago.
yeah, that's my prediction as well. Herzalis being able to train as Turk's apprentice definitely does help, and I think Herzalis might slightly have the edge on multiplayer strategy, or at least
Yes, I agree.
the intent for such. Um, but Kago's skill level, just raw skill level in mechanics and just controlling the marble, are increase just blindingly quickly, um, increasing. It also helps that he studies spherical physics or something of the sort, and is a complete nerd, which would help anyone with this game. um,
I don't think there's many
so
people that play that aren't nerds.
yeah, exactly. So frankly, I would love if Kago kept playing. I would love to see him play next tournament if he were to stay involved in the game because I think he would be just flying out of nowhere. So, but yeah, for this match specifically, I have a Kago sweep. Um,
Yeah.
maybe Herzelis could take one on not exactly a gimmicky map, but one that's can be heavily decided on Mega Marbles and Blasts, given that
Yeah.
I think he has the strategic advantage. But I think this is a pretty comfortable KO win for me.
Yeah, the only reservation there is Kago has been willing to pick small maps like Battle Cube and King of the Marble. So I don't know if it's going to come from a map like that. I think the pick that they used against Osas, which was Citadel, I think that might be their best chance to take a game off Kago. Just because of the different physics, completely throwing off Kago's internal algorithms in his head of the way the ball moves. So that's my hypothesis as to how Herzelis might get a game. But yeah, should be a Kago sweep. I actually don't even think that we need to wait for next tournament. I think someone just needs to teach this guy multiplayer strategy, and we have a potential round of 16 contender. Would be
Absolutely.
crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next up, we have Blue Sock versus Element, which I think is a super fun matchup because both of these two started playing around the same time and know each other very well as kind of mini practice partners. So I think this is going to be a very, very close series, mostly about who shows up better on the day. I have given it 3-2 to Blue Sock because I think Blue Sock just plays the game more and is probably a little bit better at this point. But it would not really surprise me if Element's able to take another nail biter of a series.
Yeah, I have 3-2 in favor of Element Lover. I think also partially for the strategic advantage, but you're definitely right in Blue Sock, just playing more and probably being more skilled, just mechanically. So yeah, I mean it could go either way. This should be a really exciting match.
Definitely. Next up, we have Hughesmat versus Farmer's Wife. I'll just come out and ask what you think is going to happen for this one.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
I
hard.
don't know enough. But yeah, I don't know enough. About, yeah, these are really really difficult maps to call. Matches to call. Um, Part of me wants to say he's Matt because just having been around for longer. But the farmer's wife, not only being connected to Turk but married, there's
Rather
probably
connected,
some.
yeah.
Yeah, rather rather connected. There's probably some. Uh, there's probably an advantage there, having one of the comfortably more decent players as your spouse. Um, I have a 3-2 game here, um, but I frankly still have yet to decide who I think would actually win this one.
All right. I have a 3-1 actually for Farmer's Wife. I think what we saw up against Plasma was pretty impressive from Farmer's Wife. And I don't know if there's really maps that Qsmat has in their pool that could counter what Farmer's Wife is really trying to do. Because I feel like the maps that Farmer's Wife is going to be really bad at is kind of like the expert level maps where navigation is difficult. I don't know if that's something that Qsmat has ever really been willing to play or pick in past tournaments because I know they've been around for a while. And so I think Farmer's Wife just kind of has the multiplayer mentality to be able to take this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at the games that HughesMatt has played as well. And with all due respect to him, there haven't really been any close games. Two of his opponents have been Lasharkus and Robert, who are significantly better, and the games against HughesMatt show that.
I
The
wasn't
one
even that
closer,
impressed against their wins with Porter. I really thought
yeah,
Porter on Cascade Falls, which is a map he's played like twice, he was winning for the first minute. So
yeah,
I think that kind of cratered my expectations for Hughes Matt a little bit. I still think they're
yeah.
a
That
solid
was
player, but I think Farmer's Wife should be able to win.
yeah. That basically rounds off what I was going to say on the HughesMatt's Accord. So I'd love to see Farmers Wife take this.
Yeah, Farmer's Wife would move up into 2-2, which is really really big for her. And then finally we have Osas versus Endzone. I think this is just going to be an Osas stomp.
Yeah, I think so
Most
too.
everyone else seems to as well, so we'll just get that out of the way. We have even more 1 and 2 games. This is the largest bracket this week. We have Kali 29 against Zickleflig. I don't think this will be close. Kali should be able to win even on crappy laptop. I think Zickleflig is just too new to the game. You agree?
Yeah, that's what I've written down. I mean, Calais is respectfully, while he's on this laptop, only a shred of what he used to be. Uh, but yeah, I mean, this should be a comfortable win against a newcomer,
Oh, you played
tournament
against
newcomer.
Ziggleflag, so I guess you
I
have a
did
bit more
play.
context.
I mean, I did play against Zickleflag, but it was the first week, and I mean, Ziggleflick, maybe Ziggleflick could play a monster game on Ziggurat, but I mean, for the sake of everyone, I hope he doesn't pick that. It's a terrible map.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have Plasma versus Surge. I think this one's going to be another Surge sweep. I think Plasma's better than what people think, but I don't think he's that good. I think Surge has just been really unfortunate to wind up in this win bracket with him.
Yep, that's exactly what I've written down too.
Okay. Next up, we have Plat Oxide versus Jax. How do you think this one's going to go?
I have Jax winning, whether by 3-0 or 3-1. I'm not exactly sure. Given that A game was able to take or I'm sorry, given that A game was able to take 3 games
Three
off of
games.
Jax, yeah, Flat Oxide is not is or I'll say it more favorably. A Game is a significantly better player than Flat Oxide is. Um, but I think Flat Oxide could take a game off of him with a smart map choice. He had a pretty close game against Eurobeater on Duplex, a 129 to 117 loss. So maybe that could work in his favor.
Yeah, I think Platok Size really needs to show up to take a game. I don't see it
Yeah.
happening because I see Jax versus A Game as a more positive reflection of A Game than I do a negative of Jax. I think A Game has actually been killing it this tournament. So
Yeah, A Game's been great, except for the betting, but
yeah, we'll pretend that's
bit
not
of a
him.
different situation. Yeah.
So I'd be extremely impressed if Plat Oxide is able to take a game, and I hope for his sake he does, but not for my bets. So
Yeah.
moving on, we have A Game versus Power John. I just showed my prediction a little bit, but I think this one's super interesting as a game. We really have the more multiplayer kind of aggressive style, the gimmick maps like Eye of the Storm for A Game, the devil on your shoulder telling you to pick the tornado uh, when you need it the most, up against Power John, who we were just talking about as a number 1 rated player in single player. So very exciting stuff. How do you think that's going to go with the 2 different strategies clashing?
I mean, with all due respect to Power John, God, I would love to see A Game take this. That would be, I mean, again, against the player who is at the top of the overall leaderboards in Platinum Quest, one of the best players in the game's history. Um, he just doesn't play Hunt, though. And given how, frankly, fantastic of a tournament A Game has been having against Jax, being able to take a game off of Jacob, and 3-2 win against Surge. How cool would it be to see him win this one?
Yeah. I'm also going to predict A Game just because I think A Game's going to easily win his 2 picks.
Yeah.
And I don't think Power John's really brought a pick strategy to his matches that is competitive in the same way that A Game has. So I think A Game will be able to take one of Power John's picks, and that's going to be the series. However, I will say that A Game is going to pick close quarters maps, and that is dreadful to play on Singapore ping. So there is a world where it all goes terribly wrong, and Power John is able to win King of the Marble against A Game on Singapore, and that could sway this series. So I'm not going to come into this with a huge amount of confidence, but I do think A Game will probably win.
Yeah, I have 3-1 for A Game as well. Power John could win a second, just given the difference in ping. But yeah, I'd love to see A Game win this.
Yeah, and I'll quickly go on a small tangent rant about the way that Challenge does this matchmaking. So Power John is actually 1-2 facing off against A Game, who's 2-1, and this is the second straight week where they've gotten screwed from their match. They played John last week, which was a 2-0 player when they were 1-1, and now they are 1-2, and they are playing a 2-1 player. And if they lose to A Game, they are going to be 1-3 and play a 2-2 player. This is because Challenge matches the bottom of the top bracket against the top of the next bracket down, which really just results in the middle bracket player getting repeatedly shafted. So I think it's really unfortunate Power John's found themselves in this position. They have a very strong chance of starting 1-3 to start the tournament, which is not reflective of their skill whatsoever. And another player in the 1-3 bracket is going to freaking die to Power John in week 5 if that happens. So we will see. Okay, moving on to the 2-1 games. I think this is where a lot of the action is going to be this week. First up, we have Connie up against Robert. I think Robert's a really great player. I've been impressed in my friendly sessions against him so far. However, I played Connie this week. I don't think this one will be close. I think it should be a effortless 3-0 for Connie. Maybe Robert takes one game if he has a really strong match on a certain map, but overall, I think it's very Connie favored.
Yeah, that's exactly what I have. Robert can be a crafty player, but I think Connie's just that much better.
Yeah. Next up, we have MBO versus Babarica. I'm sorry for forgetting to change your pictures, guys. But yeah.
Yeah, I
Still
thought Paprika
subtracted
looked a little
Quill.
strange.
Yeah, I got all the other ones on this slide. Wow, brain fart. Um, so yeah, this is a battle. I said this experience versus potential. Babrika is the faster player between the two. I know this for a fact. When Babrika is playing well, he can be faster than MBO. But MBO has that experience, has probably the best nerves of anyone in the tournament. And I think once we saw Babrika versus Ignis, this was a little bit telling for me as to how this one would play out. But what do you think?
I have MBO winning 3-1. Um, I think the experience totally works in MBO's favor, but Babarica is a wickedly fast player. And I think if he takes a game, it'll be because he just rolls and jumps faster than MBO does. Um, give Babarica 2 or 3 years or so, and he's, definitely contention to win a tournament if he keeps going in the same direction that he is right now.
Yep. I have a 3-1 as well. I think Babarica will have two chances to take a map and will probably take one pretty comfortably over MBO. But I think the nerves is going to get the better of him overall. And MBO held up extremely well against Mazik, who I think is top 3 in the tournament. So, yeah, would be very surprised if MBO didn't win the series overall. Next up, we have Ignis versus Wilches. Tell us about this one.
I have Ignis sweeping Welch actually. I think just kind of overall he's the better player. I think both players can be prone to a mental drop, but I think Welch can be a little bit more prone than Ignis is. On top of Ignis being the slightly better player, and personally, I don't really know if Welch has any particular strengths, or at least ones that, not to say he's a overall weak player, but any strengths that that come up on top of the rest of his playing kind of skill catalog. So yeah, I have an Ignis sweep here, but if Welch wins a game or two, that would be great to see.
Yeah, I also have a sweep, but it's not for lack of Wilches being capable. I just don't think he's going to be able to handle the pressure of this match. His nerves and tilt is really, really unfortunate to watch. I feel like it's one of the worst in the tournament, where he kind of just
I think so as well.
gives up on himself, and that's not going to fly against a player on the level of Ignis, unfortunately. As for his strengths, I think something that always surprises me about him playing against him is I feel like he always has a Mega Marble out of nowhere. No matter what map it is, like we could be on freaking parkour peaks, and I feel like he would still show up with a mega when I don't expect it.
Yeah, we played a game on Fun of the Sun recently, and I feel like he was always chasing me. It was infuriating.
Very annoying.
Picking the marble.
Don't do that anymore, Welches. But I feel like that might be a window of opportunity for him to beat Ignis, because I don't feel like Ignis plays a very aggressive playstyle whatsoever.
Yeah.
So if Wilches could play a map that kind of lends it to that strength, I could easily see a map going to Wilches. But that is a big if, because the nerves are going to have to be under control, and he's going to have a good start to the game, because once Wilches falls behind, I feel like that's when it all falls apart. Okay, moving on to your match up against T. Hurst. Are you looking forward to this one?
I am. I've never. Obviously, I've said before that I haven't seen T. Hurst in the multiplayer scene at all, so it'll be exciting for me to see. On firsthand experience, just kind of his feel. Objectively, and obviously no disrespect to him, because every time Tier streams, I say that I love Terry. I think I'll be able to sweep Terry, and I will try to play it like I will. But granted, if he does take a game, that would be really, really cool to see, even if I'm his opponent.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna make you predict your own game, but I'm pretty sure this one's pretty clear cut from in the eyes of most people, so not really too much to be ashamed about. And yeah, we'll have to see if Terry can be quick. I would be very excited if he plays a close game against you. I don't think he's gonna be able to win, um, but we'll see what he plays. Next up, we have Turk versus Jacob. This is a rematch from, I believe, week 6 of last year. And Jacob won that one 3-2. How do we see this one going this time?
I have Turk winning this one 3-2. I think, especially with the emergence of you and you actually having a brain compared to the rest of us initially on how to use the Mega Marble and the Blast, Turk's game has definitely improved, and when it comes to that kind of more interactive play rather than just being faster. So I have Turk winning here 3-2. I think it's more likely that Turk wins 3-1 than Jacob wins 3-2. If I had to go a little bit farther on one side or the other. But yeah, this is a Turk win for me.
So originally I agreed with you. I think Turk was going to win. I was probably going to put 3-2. But there is one thing that kind of changed my mind, and that is that Turk is actually on vacation this week. He's coming back on Sunday, and he's not going to be able to really practice the whole week. And if you know anything about Turk, is that he loves to play multiplayer. And often pings the multiplayer role and plays with whoever he can. So I think not being able to be practiced here is going to come back to bite him. And I think Jacob's going to be able to win for that reason. Jacob also looks pretty good against Voltage, I got to say. So as much as I think Turk has improved, I think it's going to be a tall ask to come back from that situation and then beat Jacob in a series. So I have 3-2 for Jacob for that reason. All right, moving on to the remaining 2-1 games. Do you think Zedron versus Eurobeater is not going to be a 3-0?
No. I mean, going into this, my mind has changed a little bit since then, but going into this, I thought Zedron was the best player in the tournament. Pre-seeds definitely looked like it because no one was even close to him.
That was also the case in 24.
Yep, that was true. So, but yeah, I mean, Zedron is still one of the top 3 players for me. And, God forbid anyone besides John who has to play against him. But yeah, I mean, Eurobeater's a decent player too. And, I'd love to see him win a game, but I don't think he will.
Yeah, rough draw for sure. Unfortunately, someone had to get Zedron, someone had to get Connie, someone had to get MBO, someone had to get Ignis. So that's how it goes in this 2-1 bracket. And the 3-1 is going to be even more brutal next week. And then we have Lasharkus versus Endy. This game is actually happening tonight. 2 people that are very friendly with each other. Should be a fun match.
Yeah, I have Endy. I couldn't decide between 3-0 and 3-1. Eventually, I went with 3-1 in favor of Endy. I think Lasharkus could steal a game. But Endy is just, I mean, Endy's a great player. He's been focusing a lot more on his interactive play using Mega Marbles and Blasts, at first complaining about them and then deciding that they're actually pretty fun. So I think Endy's just all around a better player.
Yeah, agree. I actually went with the 3-0. My only, thing that's holding me back from this 3-0 was that Lasharkus played a great Cube Isle against Eguy and almost took that one against him. So I think there are maps where Lasharkus might be able to find a victory, but I think it's less likely than it is Endy sweeping. So that's why I eventually went with an Endy 3-0. I think he's just way too good, taking 2 games off Connie. Or sorry, 1 game off Connie, but very nearly a second on Apex where he should have won. So, yep. Moving on to the 3-0 bracket, we have Eguy versus Frostfire. These 2 have played several times before, I believe. So I had to think about this one quite a bit. What about you?
God. Yeah, I mean, both players are definitely up there among the all-time greats for Hunt. It is one of life's greatest mysteries why Eguy has not won a tournament yet. Although I will say that one thing that you did mention to me when I was playing him is that he struggles with nerves. That's probably the reason why I won Vibrancy Grounds against him. But he's just like me, and he falls for nerves. My famous win against him in the playoffs, but but I did win a 3-0 reverse sweep against him in the playoffs in 2018 after a after a bit of an emotional anecdote. May have had that going in my favor as well. So yeah, I think Iga is as talented, as ridiculously talented as he is. He does fall to nerves, and I think Frostfire at this point has probably de-rusted just barely enough, and has kind of gotten especially really comfortable with Mega Marbles and Blast. I think he wins this 3-2, but this is a toss-up for me. I think.
Yeah, this match for me is between Igai's nerves and Frostfire's map pool. That those are kind of what I see as the two weaknesses of these all-time greats in the current year. And I gave it ever so slightly to Igai because I think they're both going to be able to win their map picks. I think Frostfire has some MBU classics that he's just so good at. I don't think it's going to be like Sprawl into Igai or anything like that. But I think Frost is going to be a little bit better. That nerves are going to make the difference in his picks and give them to him. And I think Igai is going to be able to find maps in the pool that Frostfire just isn't rusted enough off to really fight back against them. And then I think that's going to take us to the randomizer, where I think Igai's map pool probably gives a more favorable draft his way. And that's why I have him winning 3-2.
Yeah, again, Frostfire essentially just came back for the tournament, so has spent very little time on the newer maps. And kind of rumor has it he's or not rumor has it, but rumor has it he's been playing the new maps like he isn't completely new to them. But I think Igai is still too good that picking newer maps would probably work in Frostfire's favor. But Frostfire has been practicing a lot recently, so. Yeah, total toss-up for me.
Frostfire played Cascade Falls for the first time against me and tied. Like, he's that good at just adapting on the fly. I think there's some maps where he's not able to do that, but I feel like he enjoys that map a lot now that he's played it a bit more. So, might just be a strong one for him. We'll have to see. Moving on, though, we have myself against John. Feel free to tell me that I'm going to lose like many of the other bets. Give me your honest thoughts on this one.
I have you winning, actually. I have you winning 3-2. I will say that given what you said about, now what it feels like to experience nerves during tournaments, it's definitely closer 3-2. I think you're a more aggressive player with Mega Marbles and Blast still than John is.
Not a Mega Marble, but definitely Blast. I
not
see
a Mega
us
Marble,
as having
Blast.
two different weapons, but a similar play style.
Yeah. So I have you winning this 3-2. But you gotta talk about another toss-up. But I'd love to hear what you think, even though it's your match.
Yeah. I think in most people's minds, like, John sweeping Zedron is like elevating John now, which I think is fair. But how much can people really read into whether John played out of his mind or Zedron was a little bit rusty and didn't practice too much for the match? I don't know. No one knows, really, except maybe John and Zedron themselves. And I know John said he just played the very best of his career in that game. So can he replicate that every week? I'm not sure. I hope not, for my sake, right? But yeah, I think if he plays like he did against Zedron, he should be able to win. Just given how I looked against Connie. But if it goes like our friendly matches do, then I think people were probably going to expect me to be able to win. So in the predictions for me versus Connie, it kind of looked like whoever played me more thought I was going to win, and whoever knew Connie better thought Connie was going to win. I think something similar might be going on here for this game. All right. And finally, we have our featured matchup for week 4. This is in the 3-0 bracket. I have Voltage against Mazik. And MBO had a little bit of commentary on this one. He said, whoever wins this game is going to be considered the favorite for the tournament. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think these are the two best players in the tournament. That third player being, I don't know, between Zedron and Igai, I'm not sure about the two of them. I think I'll probably give it to Zedron just for Igai's prone to nerviness. But I think, those three are the best in this tournament. So, but I think both of them are favorites anyway. I think one of them could very easily have an off day. Doesn't exactly help Voltage that he's in Eastern Europe, so he often plays kind of a later side. But yeah, I think MBO is kind of right on that call.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on how it's going to play out, though?
I have Voltage winning 3-2. Um, but I mean, I don't really think there's much rhyme or reason to it. It's probably, my guess is just sort of vibes on this one. I think if they played a match every day of the week for 5 straight days, I think even then it would one of them would win 3 matches and the other would win 2. So really really hard to tell here. I think.
Yeah, and I think both of them have such like depth in terms of their play styles and map pool. Voltage obviously the favorite coming into this tournament, being the 2024 champion. Mazik's definitely played more multiplayer than he has over the past few months. But Voltage has just been lightning quick since he came back and had a very good showing against Jacob, of course, as well. And I know in the friendly matches that he's played, he's still stomping people left and right, even very strong players. So I think my brain says that Voltage is going to win this, but I decided to be a little bit delusional and go for Mazik because I'm very close with him and say he's going to win 3. But yeah, I think like you, this could go either way. It's definitely going to be the most exciting match to watch of this week if it's close. So should be a very, very good one. Any kind of maps that you're expecting either of them to pull out? I have kind of some of their favorites here.
Yeah, no, nothing in particular. I've played Voltage on Marble Land before a couple times and get absolutely stomped on. So not surprising to see that one on there. I'm also curious to hear from your perspective. What in particular do Voltage and Mazik edge the other over in style of play or in strategy, do you think?
Yeah, so I actually have never played Voltage. I need to change that soon, hopefully before I face him in the tournament. Although if he keeps winning, then it's going to be unlikely. But from Mazik's perspective, he is a very fast, very intelligent player. The places where I've seen him really kind of not be as strong is with the megas, with the blasts on those kind of close quarters maps. He doesn't like it when there's like walls surrounding them, um, kind of like Zedron, as John was saying. Now, is Voltage the kind of player to really exploit that against Mazik? I don't think so. Voltage seems to be a very just all around excellent player. Loves the MBU classics. Um, is just very fast as well. So I think they have a very similar skill profile to each other. I think Mazik has really worked on his strategy over the past couple months since he started playing me. Um, and Voltage, I'm not so sure how deep that strategy is, but I do know that Mazik had a ton of nerves in the game against MBO, and Voltage has a lot of experience diff. Being the returning champion, there is a lot of expectation that comes with that title, but also he's been in much more high stakes matches than a week 4 game of Swiss. So I expect Voltage to come in kind of better equipped for this match. All right. Any final thoughts on your end before we sign off?
No, not really. I think, well, especially given the slide I'm looking at, yeah, I mean, I'd love to see a randomizer on Amsterdam between these two. Um, but yeah, in general, I mean, this is when I think kind of everybody knows that this is when matchups start to get really, really, really exciting. Weeks 4, 5, and 6 are always a lot more, well, on average, tend to be more interesting to watch than the first couple of weeks. But once kind of playoff crunch time comes around, even though it's 3 wins into the playoffs and not just top 24, I'm more curious to see who barely doesn't make it than who barely does make it. But we're a couple weeks away from that, so we'll have to wait.
You reminded me that I've actually qualified for playoffs.
Congratulations! Look at you. It sounds
amazing. Nice. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's kind of cool. Along with everyone else in the 3-0 bracket, and I gotta say, this is a really unlucky draw for both of them. I feel like this is the kind of the top two players that I would have put in the 3-0 bracket, having to face off against each other so quickly. Even though there's still 2 more weeks after this, so a little bit unfortunate, and it will be even more unfortunate for whoever plays the loser in week 5 in the 3-1 match. So, yeah, that's going to wrap us up for the Week 4 review. Thank you so much to Nockess for coming on and putting on a very long show today. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of content for everyone to enjoy. I'm so grateful for having you on, Nockess.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yep. Everyone else, good luck in your games this week. Have a good time. See ya.